Hi everyone, welcome back to Homegrown Handmade. I'm Allison and today we are back in my kitchen. Today I wanted to try a recipe. It's not my own. It's actually from Lisa over at Farmhouse on Boone. It is her sourdough pasta recipe. I've been learning a lot more lately about all the health benefits of fermenting your grains and utilizing sourdough and how it's more digestible and all that kind of stuff. And so I've been trying to incorporate sourdoughs and fermented grains into our diets more. I've been making my own pasta for a little while now, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. I've also been making my own sourdough for a while, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. So I thought, well, gosh, let's try to meld these. And so that's what I'm going to do today. I thought I'd bring you along with me just to try it out, and I'll let you know what I think and how I think that the recipe maybe compares to a traditional sourdough or a traditional pasta recipe, like if it's easier or harder to roll out and textures and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I thought I'd bring you all with me, so let's get started. All right, so as I mentioned before, it's a really simple recipe. It's 3 cups of flour, a cup of discard or fed starter, and 4 eggs. So I'm just gonna put that all into my mixing bowl. And then I'm going to pop it on my KitchenAid at a medium speed or low speed for about 10 minutes. You know, right off the bat, the first thing I thought of when I saw this recipe was how much easier it would be to work with this dough because there's such a high moisture content in it compared to like the doughs that I've made in the past. Especially like when you think about just even adding the cup of sourdough discard or starter, that adds a lot more moisture to your recipe. Or I always use 3 eggs, this uses 4. And that was one of the things that I found in working pasta by hand was the recipe that I had was a, I guess, drier recipe. And I felt like if it did have a higher moisture content, then that way the dough would have been easier to work with. It was really sticky, really tough. My hands hurt for like 3 days after kneading it by hand. But I feel like with this one, just looking at it right now and like how much with the dough, like I said, with the discard and the extra egg, I do think that this would be probably much easier to work by hand if you didn't have a stand mixer. So that's just my thoughts right off the bat initially about like a traditional pasta recipe versus this. But I'm gonna pop this on my stand mixer and let it go for about 10 minutes and then we'll go from there. Hours my dough has been resting on the counter. I just got my KitchenAid attachment onto my mixer so that I can roll out my dough. The recipe says you can let your dough rest anywhere from 30 minutes to 6 hours in the future, and had I planned ahead well enough today, I probably would have let it go for the 6 hours, only because I'm really looking for as much fermentation as possible with my grains. It's no extra work, it just has to rest longer, but it's getting late here, and so I need to get dinner going, and I'm just gonna call it now at 3.5 hours and then get it rolled out so we can have dinner. Other thing that I did do, and I don't know if this was like the right thing or the wrong thing, I did pull my dough out of the bowl and put it in some cling wrap. Pasta dough needs to be kept from drying out, and the recipe didn't really say like to put it in cling wrap or not, but I chose to pull mine out of the bowl and cover it like this because I was concerned that the top of it would develop like a crust. It's a very like sticky dough here. And I'm used to working with pasta doughs that are much, I don't know, drier than this. So it might have been fine, but I was just concerned, so that's what I did. I'm gonna cut this up and roll it out, and hopefully it doesn't cause too much of a mess. This is a very, very sticky dough. Let's see here. I don't even know really the best way of going about this. I might just cut off a chunk of it. Gosh. Concerned that I need more flour maybe. It's gonna fall off the counter here. It does just say to like pull it out and put it in your dough attachment, but I'll be honest with you, I don't think I can get this through my dough attachment. This is really, really sticky. Okay, let's try plan B. I'm going to improvise and I'm gonna roll this out onto a floured surface because this is a little bit too sticky for me to work with. So, plan B. Okay, so I am straying from the recipe for a moment because I find this dough too sticky to actually work with effectively. So I don't know what I'm doing differently or wrong or whatever, but as you can see, it's pretty darn sticky. And I wanted to get a little bit of flour on it before I ran it through my pasta cutter or pasta shaper, I guess is what you would call it. Because it's just gonna stick the whole way through and I'm not gonna, it's not gonna work. So I am turning it out onto a floured surface, which is also proving to be easier said than done. This is a very, very, very sticky dough. It feels great. I mean, the dough itself is really, it's really nice. It's a really thick dough. Very dense, I guess you would say, or robust. I don't know the right terminology. I'm just making things up right now, but it's very messy and I feel like I'm losing a ton of my dough here. So now looking back, I probably in the future would not put this in cling wrap because of how sticky the dough is. I was concerned that it might dry out in my bowl, but obviously that was not a concern that was warranted. Just trying to get as much of this off of here so I don't lose a ton of dough. I guess that's gonna probably have to be as good as it gets. It's unfortunate, but live and learn. So now this dough, I'm gonna just put a little bit of flour on it. And now I'm gonna cut it into quarters. And I should be able to roll it out now. It just was so sticky before. Straying from the recipe, lightly dusted my surface with flour, floured both sides of my dough. I'm gonna cover them now so that they don't dry out while I'm rolling this out. And we'll see how it all works. Okay, so now let me show you how I use my KitchenAid. If you haven't seen my other videos where I make pasta, it's very, very simple. I had tried making pasta in the past by rolling it out by hand, and that was one of the most awful experiences I've ever had. I do not recommend it. Although with this dough is really soft and pliable, and so this probably wouldn't be too bad to roll out by hand. In fact, I mean, I can stretch it and it's not really springing back. That's what happens without fermenting the dough. The glutens in your flour develop when you either knead it by hand or in the mixer, and it makes it really tight, and you do let it sit and rest for a little bit. I usually let mine rest for like an hour to an hour and a half to allow those glutens to relax, but they certainly don't ever relax to this point. So this is awesome. This is a very nice, soft, pliable dough. This would not be a burden to roll out by hand. So I do like that. But let me show you how I use my KitchenAid because I love that. And we'll get that going. All right, so I have my pasta rolling attachment on my KitchenAid here. It is set to the widest setting. I'm going to take the dough, kind of shape it into a little bit of a rectangle, turn it on the lowest speed, and then I'm gonna feed my dough through. So just watch. It'll go through. It's still a little bit sticky. And then when it comes out the other side, oh gosh, this is a mess. This is a very, very sticky, messy dough. When it comes out the other side, I want to typically fold it in thirds. Oh my gosh. And then it doesn't look like that normally. I normally fold it in thirds and then I put it in again and run it through. I might have to roll this by hand. I'm gonna turn this off and I think we're gonna go back. Okay, so the good thing about cooking a lot is that you don't get too caught off guard when you're improvising. And I'm kind of glad I recorded this because I was just testing this recipe out and I feel like a lot of people might have the same problem as me doing this for the first time. So I'm gonna scoot this aside. I'm gonna kind of run my flour, a little bit more flour here. Dust that. It's a really nice dough, but it's just so sticky. It's really hard to work with. My KitchenAid can't even manage it, so. Okay, with the dough being as sticky as it is, I'm having to improvise quite a bit. I am flouring my surface, and I need, actually, it's a pretty heavy flour on here because otherwise it's sticking. I'm going to kind of shape this to a little bit of a rectangle. And then I'm going to flour on top of my dough a little bit more. I might actually even work with a smaller piece of dough. I'm keeping it covered, although it probably doesn't matter. Keeping it covered so it doesn't dry out. But to be honest with you, this dough is so wet and sticky, it wouldn't really matter if it dried out a whole lot. It's very, very difficult to work with. I couldn't use my KitchenAid mixer because it was so sticky. It was just gumming up and turning into a lump under there. So, all right, so I've got some flour on here. I've stretched it out a little bit. I'm gonna fold it into thirds just to build up the dough a little bit. I'm gonna add more flour onto my surface so that this dough doesn't stick. I don't have a rolling pin, so I am using a bottle of wine. They work just as well. And I'm gonna roll this out away from me and towards myself. I'm gonna pick it up, making sure, see how it's still sticking to the countertop like that, making sure that the flour's all underneath it. Flip it over. I'm gonna continue to roll. I'm trying to get it as thin as I can, but again, it's just a really difficult dough to work with, so I'm making do. And I'm using a pizza cutter and I'm just cutting it into strips. We're gonna call this pasta rustica, rustic pasta. Don't fault me for my lack of Italian, but I think that translates pretty effectively. So I'm using a pasta cutter to cut it up, and then I'm just taking it and transferring it onto a dish towel to let it dry out a little bit before I cook it. But it is so darn sticky. I'm having to really rely on my bench scraper to get it up off of here too. It's a very difficult dough to work with. We're doing our best. We're still gonna eat it. We're gonna love it. But I probably won't do this recipe again. Anyways, I'm gonna keep going with this and I will let you know when I'm done, how we liked the pasta, how it tasted and how it worked out. And if there are any other things that come up along the way as I'm working with it, I will turn the camera back on and let you know, but you don't need to sit here and watch me roll out pasta by hand. Okay, so I have my pasta in the pot now. It is cooking up nicely. I've been kind of trying to rack my brain as to why this didn't work out. It's a really, really, really sticky dough. I cannot say that enough. I was thinking though, I might have over mixed it. When I had it with my dough hook, it looked like it had come together much more before it hit that 10-minute mark. I just kind of set the timer for 10 minutes because that's what it said in the recipe. And then when I came like maybe around the 6-minute mark, 7-minute mark, it was really coming together nicely. And then when I came back at 10, it looked really goopy in the bottom of the bowl. So that's one thing I thought it might have gone wrong. And the other thing I'm wondering is if it's just too darn hot in my house. My air conditioning went out, which I know I'm crazy for making pasta right now, but the air conditioning went out in the house, and so it's really hot in here. I think the last time I checked the thermostat, it's like 87 or 88 degrees in the house. So that could also have something to do with why it was so sticky. But anyways, I'm not super impressed with this recipe, but I also could have been user error as well. So I might try it again one more time, just under different circumstances. Keep an eye on the dough so it doesn't like get so gloopy in the bowl when I'm mixing it, and then also see how it is when it's not like 100,000,000 degrees in our house. So anyways, I'll put a picture in a minute of the finished product. Thank you all for joining me for my little experiment. It didn't turn out as I thought it would, but I'm glad I filmed it because it was definitely an adventure. So anyways, thank you for joining me. If you like this, if you kind of want to follow along as I start testing out more recipes and things like that, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications. That way you'll be notified every time I post new content. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you all next time. Take care, guys. Bye.